I will admit the person.
Okay, mahalo everyone for attending today's Next Steps program, where we'll be hearing about the Digital Navigators Program in the Hawaii State Public Library System. Before we get started with our today's program, I'd like to tell you about a couple of our upcoming programs. In August, we'll be hearing from Brianne Imada about trauma-informed librarianship. And then in September, we will be hearing from Stacy Naipo about the State Historic Preservation Division. And so please keep an eye out for the announcements about those programs. And today it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers, and thanks to both of them for being with us today. We have Kaʻala Souza, who is the Executive Director of Māpunawai. And then we also have Christine Weis, who is the Librarian Project Manager and LSTA Coordinator in the Office of the State Librarian. And she's been with HSPLS since 2019. She's originally from Chicago and previously served as the museum librarian and head of collections at the Field Museum of Natural History. Ooh! So we are delighted to have them both here today, and I'll let them take it away. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. So, Kaʻala, do you want to share the
Sure.
first slide?
Can.
And then just a brief mention for you as well, as this is being recorded, there's a lot of people who watch this after the fact. So we're going to pretend that we're talking to a big crowd of people who are going to be watching this in the future. So thank you everybody who is watching today or watching in the future. To learn more about the Digital Navigators Program in the Hawaii State Public Library System, as many of you well know, that libraries have been providing assistance for patrons beyond books for many, many years. And so when it comes to the many hats that our staff have to wear in our public branches, from answering reference questions, helping, with other, basic services, more and more, they encounter needing help with devices, asking for questions about, navigating for government services and things like that. So we have worked with various agencies the last few years to get funding so that we can work on, finding ways to provide services to improve the digital skills of our patrons. So for this particular program, I will let Kaʻala Souza take over from here to tell us a bit more about the Digital Navigators Program. And then through his talk too, we'll probably talk about the basic computer classes as well, because I saw that on your slide. So I'll kind of go back and forth and we'll kind of trade comments. But for now, I will let Kaʻala take it away. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to this too. I'm a big fan of libraries and have been for my whole life. And when I first started going to libraries, obviously there's just books. And for me now to go into libraries and see computers everywhere is a big deal. I grew up here in Hawaii, so my home library was Kailua, and I still frequent it when I can. But we're talking about this digital navigators here today, and we have a couple of slides just to keep me on track. Actually, Christine is fine on track, but I tend to talk a lot. I got like 8 or 9 slides I want to share with you and kind of outline what, first of all, the Digital Navigator Project is, why it began, who it is, who we're serving, those kind of things, and maybe a little bit of how this fits in to other locations. We've participated. I work with a nonprofit called Māpunawai, and we have been in this particular digital literacy space since the pandemic, and have been to conferences all over the place, and have talked about what we're doing here in Hawaii, and have been pretty excited about the things that we've developed here. The first thing to note about this Digital Navigator program or process is that term Digital Navigator is something that came out during the pandemic, and the National Digital Inclusion Alliance (NDIA) had coined this digital navigator phrase and some outline for what a digital navigator could do nationally. and we've adopted it. I think here in Hawaii, we understand that the concept of navigator a little bit different, and it's a powerful word for us. But the when we think about this digital navigator, we're thinking about um, just somebody sitting down helping somebody else. For us, it's right now the way this is rolled out is that we have a one-on-one with the patron at their library, and essentially to work through whatever digital task that they bring in, and that whatever part is the key thing. So that we don't know what somebody's going to walk through the door with. But if you think about the question, what is a digital navigator? If you've ever been to an Apple store, a Genius Bar, anywhere, we kind of started out with that. I remember talking to Stacy Aldrich and Christine Weiss about this, and Stacy mentioning the Apple Genius Bar. I'm like, yes, we want to compete with them, actually. We have more locations now, 51 of them across the state, 50 and a half, almost 51. But we want to be able to provide that same level of expertise and support to people who might walk in who don't have an Apple Genius Bar anywhere close by them. I'm on Molokai today, and we're pretty far away from any tech support. So this is a big deal for us. Essentially, what we do is we have an appointment that somebody schedules. Uh, it's in every branch. We don't have a navigator in Lahaina right now. Still working on that construction and Hana, but that's been off and on there. I'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about challenges. 45-minute sessions, they're free to everybody. And one of the big things that we've learned from working with the Hawaii State Public Library System is access, is being able to be there for people when they need it. And so that is essentially it. What is a digital navigator is a big deal. It addresses something of the problem that we've been working on for the last going on 6 years now, which is the lack or what we were talking about earlier, just before we started, the digital divide, which was a very, very real thing. The digital divide was pronounced or maybe highlighted during the pandemic. But for us, one of the key statistics that we share all the time here is that 30% of our state's workforce can't pass a basic computer skills test. And this was astonishing to me when I first saw this back in 2021 or so. I just I didn't think about it. I think most of us, anybody who's on the Zoom call, or if you're especially, or even if maybe especially if you're watching this delayed, which means that you can check your email, you can go to a link, you can do all these things. That's no big deal for you. But for more than 30% of our state, being able to watch a pre-recorded Zoom, you know, meeting like this is almost out of reach. And this is not our numbers. 30% is coming out of the National Skills Coalition talking about workforce. The Workforce Development Council here in Hawaii did a survey with OmniTrack, and our numbers are going to be closer to 39%, closer to 40%. So this is the big deal. That's workforce. And the reason I wanted to lead with that is the big number. And on the right-hand part of the screen, it says this isn't just a kupuna issue. Is because everybody just assumes that if you're older, you don't know how to use a computer. And our average age is 70 years old, 70.5 years old of people coming into the library. But it's not because only 70-year-olds don't know how to use a computer. So 30% of our workforce, again, 39% here in Hawaii are going to struggle with the basic computer skills test. North Star is one that the library uses and that we've adopted. This is a big deal. A lot of these guys will go home. They'll ask the spouse for support. They'll ask kids for support. They'll ask coworkers for support. But what this means is essentially that when they go to work, their efficiency rates, that productivity is challenged. So let me catch up a little bit on time here. The other thing I learned from the libraries is that before I even started saying digital literacy, the libraries have been doing digital literacy support and training. And all of you who are involved in libraries know this. And it's, for me, it's relatively new, 5, 6 years. But people come into the library and they say, hey, can you help me with this? Or can you teach me how to do this? And it's a challenge because you don't know where they are, that they're coming in with multiple devices. It's a big deal. It's a problem. We're always saying that the pandemic didn't create this digital divide, it just exposed it. If you were digital when the pandemic hit, you became more digital. And if you were not digital before when the pandemic hit, you just fell further and further behind. That gap increased. And so one of our first projects with the library was actually I was working with the Workforce Development Council, and we started working with the libraries to host classes that we were doing with the community colleges across the state. And we had, I think, a couple, maybe 200 classes that we were working with, and the libraries were the place that we wanted to have the classes. The people were more comfortable going to a library, I think, and anecdotally, than maybe even going to a community college. And that was back in 2022. 2024, we set up a giant project for us. This is where we ended up scheduling 712 classes. It was supposed to be a 2-year project, I think, Christine. But we
Wedged
ended up
it into a year, less than a year.
less than a year. Is like yeah, it was pretty crazy. And it was a fantastic success, but 712 classes, about 8 or 9 months. We had over 4,000 participants come through that. It was in every branch, um, except for Lahaina. Um, again on that. Oh, did we have classes? Can't remember. We did do classes in Lahaina. We just didn't do
Because
them
you
in the
had them
library.
remote. You had them
Yeah,
like at the courthouse.
we had them in the courthouse there. We did them with the bus, and we made that thing work. And so we had classes everywhere, and it was fantastic success. And one of the things though that I think led to this digital navigator model was the need for, after you go to a class, we had 6 different classes, like a basic computer class, what is a computer? Then it was how to use the internet, what's the internet, what's the browser, email, online safety. We moved into smartphones, which was incredibly well-filled classes. And then talked about Google Docs actually, and the cloud computing towards the end there. But it just left, I think, what's the next step? And that's where the digital navigator model came up for us. And Christine, I'm going to stop here and have you fill in some of the gaps from your perspective and on this timeline, and see what you
Right,
want to add.
exactly. So with the computer classes that were 24, 25, as Kaʻala said, those were very regimented, basic skills, things like that. But what would happen at the end of all the sessions is, oh, but hey, I have my phone, and
That's
can
right.
you show me how to do this? Or I have this on my computer at home, and can you show me how to do this? So at the same time, we had piloted in a handful of libraries a digital navigator project where it really was, hey, I'm here, bring in your questions, your devices, whichever. And so knowing that, okay, you've got the people with the basics, what do we do next? And then here we started with October 2025 and the digital navigator program. And while the pilot was only at 5 or 6 libraries, again, the intention is that this is all of our libraries, as they currently are, all 50 of them at this point. So
Yeah, that's exactly it. And one of the other metaphors that we use when we're interviewing people to be navigators is, not just an Apple Genius bar, but also like a hospital emergency room, minus the blood, and all of the kind of trauma. It's like if, my wife is a nurse practitioner, ICU nurse, ER nurse, and you don't know what's going to walk through the door in any given day. And for that, we need digital navigators who are going to be deep. So not somebody who uses and has only used an iPhone, because then Android phones are unique. They're different. They're just whole different operating systems. And so when people come in for this, I have this and that. We need to be ready for that. And the next slide over here helps us to understand a little bit about what this works like. I mentioned earlier 45-minute appointments at every branch. You can book them at our website. It's book.mapunawai.com, or you can call the library, or you can call us. And we have a lot of people who will call directly to our office, call the library, because what happens is if you can book your own appointment, it presupposes a certain skill level. And for people there's a whole bunch of people who cannot. And again, I'm not talking about just 70-year-olds. And we've had 90-plus-year-olds in this. And so when we talk about averages, it's that it's a pretty broad range. But if you can do this, it's different. You're coming in with different questions. If you cannot, you're calling the library, you're signing up in person at the library. you're calling us, you don't know how to cancel your own appointment. What you can do, like, because you get a text message confirmation, you get an email confirmation, you can cancel, you can reschedule. But every day we get people saying, can you help me cancel my thing? And for the most part, people will come in for things like we put general tutoring, but it will be, how to use a program, how to use an app on their phone. We've had people come in for really diverse things. And again, it goes back to even how we identify somebody who's going to be a good navigator is, can you handle, most people think I use a computer all day. I can help people be a navigator. But when somebody comes in, we had a 75-year-old lady in Waianae who came in asking about the Tor browser, Tor. And there's not a lot of people who use the Tor browser on a daily. But she was interested in trading cryptocurrency. And, it was kind of like a joke for us, like, what are you day trading Bitcoin, But it was so interesting because you would not expect somebody to come in and say, hey, I need some help on this. And, we have navigators who are curious, they're doing this, you know, um, uh, because this is the kind of stuff, the world that they live in. And you're going to be prepared, not just for, I can't log into my Gmail account. Um, I don't know what my password is. My daughter made my password. But also, how do I fix this? How do I fix that? We've had people, we've fixed karaoke machines who couldn't connect to Bluetooth things. And we've also had people who came in and said, I don't want any computer knowledge. I don't want to learn how to use a computer. I just need to fill out this form so I don't go to jail because I miss my summons, my court summons, and there's going to be a bench warrant out for me. And I don't know how to fill out the form online. And we talk about that digital divide. The common expression is everything is online, right? So um, we've had people who need help getting support for after disasters, filling out things post the Lahaina fires. It's basically, what can we use a computer for, and how can we help you with that? And that's it. Telehealth, sometimes people will say, I have a doctor appointment coming up. Can you help me with that too? So what else, Christine, am I missing on this?
On this, not really. That's probably help. I think a lot of our staff still get help with like downloading digital books. I'm
Yep.
not sure if that goes to the navigators
Yep.
a lot, but the library has a ton of resources, and I'm not sure how many of those things that maybe do kind of come into here too. But
Mhm. Yes, that's
um,
true. Yeah.
yeah.
In our first week onboarding, we actually give our navigators, certain tasks. It's like little Easter egg hunt, and one of them is to go set up a Wall Street Journal account using the link from the library. So, download movies and ebooks on Libby. So
Because
that is a
I
big deal.
think Yeah, I think that's what we've encouraged too, is that even if there's not an appointment,
Mhm.
that they could perhaps like roam around a little bit
Yep.
and see if somebody needs assistance, in the library with something, if they look like
Perfect.
they could,
Yeah.
could use a
Yep.
hand. So
Yep. On any given month, we'll have maybe 10 to 20% of the total of people, patrons be walk-ins. I would say over here 600 to 800 appointments every month. That's probably more total participants every month, but there'll be walk-ins, and not every branch is back to back to back. Some of them are. It used to be 30 minutes, and 30 minutes just didn't work. Like, we're changing this on the fly. It's too short. 45 minutes barely, covers some things for people. So but there's the branches are different all over the place, right? So some of them will be back to back to back, and others of them, maybe we'll see one person a day, one or two people a week, and it just depends. It's not because of a lack of demand. A lot of times it's more um, just awareness, and so getting the word out to people that it's there. We've had people get mad at us because they didn't know about this earlier. and it'd be like, I'm sorry, I apologize. So, we started in October. We started at 6 branches. Uh, we ramped up, I think, by January to get all of the branches there. Um, and this is where we're at now. In some branches that are busy, we are adding other more hours. For the most part, we try and be at a branch twice a week. It's not every day. We don't have resources for a full-time navigator in the branch every single day. So people have to make appointments. We limit the appointments to 30 days out because in the beginning we didn't, and people would schedule themselves out for the next 6 months, and there'd be no room for anybody else.
Yeah, there's one that wanted to book weekly for a very
Yes,
long
yeah.
time. We're
Oh
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, I mean, multiple appointments a day also is another thing we had to change. So we've, just as people, um, they get pretty, this is my library, this is my navigator, this is my day. And sometimes people will come once a week for 4 weeks, for 5 weeks, and then they're pretty much, our idea is our goal is to help them become independent and to learn and to continue learning on their own. And so we're not just trying to, we're trying to triage and stop the bleeding, but at the same time, add in some learning inside there. Some of the big challenges for us have to do with some of the areas that are more challenging to recruit for. The Pahala Na'alehu, we have a navigator out there who can't give us all of the hours that we want, but is a retired cybersecurity guy from the Navy and very, very, very good. There's a Lanai, we get about 8 hours per branch. And so on me backtrack and say on Oahu, we can have people be full time. We were looking at part time people, but there's people who can work full time, and they're good. And so we have full time people, we have part time people, and part time all the way down to like 8 hours on Lanai. If that navigator there wanted to be full time, we couldn't get her. There's not enough work, and so finding the unicorn. Is the challenge, and it takes a lot of time. And that's one thing that we didn't plan on, we didn't anticipate. We thought it would be a little bit easier actually to recruit for this. But for us, these are the three C's that make the great navigator here. And these are all the things that we try and suss out in our applications, our interviews, our application form ask questions that I've never seen before, only because, we have a job here that's very, very different, but we absolutely need all three of these C's here. We need somebody who can communicate in a way that doesn't make somebody feel embarrassed. People are already coming in very often anxious, afraid. They feel like they're the only one that doesn't know how to use a computer. Their grandchildren have made them feel like they're not that smart. And so we need somebody who can communicate in a way that removes that barrier, alleviates that, and also that can communicate uh, to normal people. Very often, if you have an IT department, there's that one person in the IT department that speaks to the rest of the company because they can speak to human beings. Uh, actually been talking to the University of Hawaii and their computer science, IT departments, and trying to see maybe if we can get some of their students to give them real life work time in interfacing with people to learn these skills because it is a skill to be able to communicate technically to somebody. We need navigators who secondly, and not secondly actually, they're all on the same level for us, but that know computers. And so, we have about I think 21 navigators right now. Goes back and forth between 19 and 23 navigators over the last 8 months since October. Um, but we need people who know computers. Of those 20 or so navigators, only two of them actually have degrees in computer science or IT. The rest of them are people who are are deep into computers because that's who they are. They ended up working, learning on the job. We have self-proclaimed geeks and nerds, and we have one of our youngest navigators is got a scholarship to college not for sports but for esports for a computer gaming. But these are like things they would be on the computer no matter what. So you got to know computers, and it's not just I use a computer all the time. One of the questions that we ask people on the application is like, what operating systems are you familiar with? And it's become kind of a joke now because we've had so many people ask me back saying, what do you mean by operating system? And then I'll say, what do you mean? What do I mean by operating system? That we can't go any further. Like like, and or they'll say, "Oh, I use every operating system." I go, "I don't know what that means. Tell me how many are there?" And then they'll say things like, "Well, I've used Word and Excel and Outlook." And I'm like, "Okay, those are software applications. Have you heard of an operating system?" And that's it's not surprising to me now that people can use a computer every single day of their life for the last 20 years and not know the terminology. But the terminology is important for us. We need them to be fluent in that and to be able to translate that to people who don't know computers and maybe don't even care. So, and the last part of this, though, the last C is that they care. The navigator would about their community, about the people. We need people who are people. We need people who are energized by helping people solve problems and helping people feel good about themselves. Um, that is a big deal. So these are not the first, second, third. These are all across the board. We can't have one without the other. I put a little note here for myself, the go-to interview question. This has been a good one over the last couple of months is, tell me the difference between an app and a browser. And it's not an easy question to answer. Well, it is actually, depending upon who you are. Um, but it's not easy to communicate very often to people who don't know these terms. It's along the lines of like, what is the internet? We all use it every single day. Like my wife was asking me the other day about the moon and high tide and low tide, and I just said, "Oh, that's gravity," something I can't explain it, and so I would not be a good astronomic astronomy navigator. I just can't explain that kind of stuff. So, that is what we're looking for in this. One last slide that I have, and then I'll stop and turn it back over to Christine and you guys for questions. But we have, this is a great picture. I found this just the other day, throw this into the slides. It was a kind of a thank you note saying I learned more from this one session than I've been able to get from reading books during the past year. And I love books, but this one right here, this was a 45-minute session. We've had people who are incredibly grateful. This is one of the most rewarding jobs ever, is helping people figure this stuff out because they're so desperate. They've tried, we've had people crying, in our team communications board. We have different channels, quick questions, challenges, schedules. We had to create one called Food Flex because so many patrons would come into the library bringing food after their appointments to thank the navigators. And so we'd have people, say, "Oh, look, I got this box of candy," and then somebody on Kauai would say, "Oh, look, I got a bag of salt," and have somebody on Maui had, "Look, I got this plate lunch." So we created just a channel for people to share the food, and for new navigators who haven't got this yet, they don't know, like what does this mean? And it's almost like it's a rite of passage. If you don't get food, it's you're not there yet. But it's very, very much uh, a work of that's of passion, for us. So this is a big deal. Most of the people, when we start talking about um, uh, at the end, we ask them to fill out a quick survey for us. Would you tell your friends about this? And the other one is, do you feel more confident? Actually, we ask them when they come in, like, did you feel confident when you come in? Oh, excuse me, how comfortable are you with computers? And we're talking like super, super high 90s, out of, we're at about, I don't know, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 appointments so far. I can't remember the exact number. But we're in the high 90s every single month of people saying, I would recommend this to my family and friends. I feel confident. I feel slightly more confident. I feel very confident. We're in the high 90s on that too. So it's been an interesting, you know, ready, fire, aim kind of project. Let's adapt, let's adjust. It's not always the same as what's happening nationally, but I think that we can contribute even to that discussion, and we have at several conferences over the last couple of years where we've shared our partnerships with the libraries and the things that we're doing here in Hawaii. So, Christine, that's about it for me. Anything else that you wanted to add for any of these
Thank you.
things?
Just kind of going off of this last slide, Kaʻala does monthly reporting for us of statistics, types of questions. Again, these sort of surveys with some demographic information, satisfaction, all of those things. And those are really helpful for us for our future planning. As I'd mentioned, we a lot of our staff are already digital navigators in some ways, but the challenge is always the time to be able to do it. I mean, to have that one-on-one human, which is what more and more people want nowadays. Our staff always can't do that because the phone is ringing and the paper's jammed and, you know, the plumber's there and there's just all sorts of crazy things going on. But I think with this model, what we hope to do moving forward is for our staff that are definitely more inclined with this, if we can give them additional training too, based on this experience of, hey, we want to help you be a digital navigator as well. And then maybe we can have some sort of a hybrid model moving forward that we have the ability to maybe have some dedicated, this is a perfect world pie in the sky that I'm mentioning here, don't quote me, but, you know, maybe we can have some dedicated digital navigators. Maybe we can enhance the skills of some of our staff because as we talk, you know, do we really, some of the things that they do, they're just some of these routine, mundane things. And we want our staff to connect more with our patrons and serve them. And I think some of them really want to. And so I think this is an avenue that we can sort of upskill them as well, you know, in their tasks. And it's a really great community service. Like I said, we've gotten so much positive feedback. And you know, Kaʻala said, why didn't I know about this sooner? So it's something we're trying to collect all this data that we can and do our lessons learned. The big thing too, like my role in this is I'm just sort of like, I don't know what I am. I try to keep the information flowing. Just like with any, you know, big project, just sort of be there as a liaison for the staff. If you have any questions on things, Kaʻala, if there's questions here, so that they know like the one person to ask. We didn't want them to be like, who do I ask about this? Well, you ask Christine about this, right? And then we have a Teams channel internally for postings and, you know, new information and stuff like that. So, you know, big projects, communication, always super key. You know, I think at this point it's flowing pretty well. But yeah, we just need to adjust and pivot as, you know, as we have availability, new navigators. We realize that certain libraries are busier than others. So we're just, you know, trying to maximize, you know, this resource right now. So yeah, I think that's, except for the last slide, the question slide. Yep, there you go. So yeah, so anybody can definitely feel free to reach out. I imagine to Kaʻala as well. You're welcome to email us with any questions you might have about the program, or if you have any questions right now.
Well, mahalo, Kaʻala and Christine. Thank you so much for that fabulous presentation. I think this is a wonderful program, and obviously lots and lots of people are benefiting from it. If any of our attendees have any questions, please either unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Go ahead, Lynette. Oh, we can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is there like a minimum age that they have to be to become a digital navigator?
That is a good question. You know, there's we haven't even thought about that. We're hiring people now. There's a program called Tech Savvy Teens
Yes.
that we've interacted with over the last couple of years, and they're going to work directly with teens to try and, you know, train them and help them. Anybody who has some proficiency in this. We don't. I actually interviewed somebody on Maui, who I think was a junior in high school.
Okay.
And, you know, for me, I have 3 C's. You know, can you communicate? Do you know computers, and do you care? And then for somebody who was a little bit younger, we would say, do you have your parental permission? You know, how do we do that? Because it really is not an age thing, which means that if somebody was 80 years old and could communicate well and knew computers and cared, it just does not matter. Those are not the things for us. Finding those three, that intersection point with all three of those things are there is the harder thing. And so age is like the furthest thing from my mind. That being said, I think I've only had one high school student apply. Though we did hire, I think, we had one person from the tech savvy teams that we hired, and we were excited to be part of that pipeline for them.
Actually, that's the reason why I was
Mhm,
asking, because I
mhm,
know somebody who's involved with the tech savvy
mhm,
teens, and I
mhm,
know that they just went to Molokai
mhm, mhm.
this weekend and they were working on something. But um they're I think the person I'm thinking of, he's in high school right
Mhm,
now,
mhm,
and so I
mhm.
was just wondering whether you would limit their age, like because they're minors, whether you would need certain kinds of things in place to, because they're a nonprofit, I believe.
Mhm. We're a
And I
nonprofit too. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so if there are certain things about their age that you might need to clear before you could have them involved with your program.
yeah, that's just straight HR question.
Mm.
And for us again, it's there's there's more and more people. When I first started doing this, there's nobody doing anything. So um we have there's a group on Kauai that is working strict just with kupuna just to help them get on Zoom. And I just talked to the Spectrum folks because they had funded them. This is the thing that they're funding. And Wahiwa, there's another recipient from that Spectrum um, funding source that is also just for seniors. I think that, like, again, for me, it's there's 500,000 people who need help, and we don't have enough. And so, Christine was talking about having the librarians who want to do this, have a proclivity maybe for this. They have a bent towards this. They want to. You have to want to. You can have the knowledge and you could be able to communicate, but if you don't care, it's just not going to help. Again, there's no age thing. We've had kupuna help kupuna. We've had 30-year-olds helping 15-year-olds. Um, this particular problem in the digital divide is not it's not it's not limited to any particular demographic that I've been able to find. Like whatever your zip code is, I can find a demand. It just does not matter. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter if you're employed, not employed. Um, you know, the easiest thing, the lowest hanging fruit, the most visible fruit is the kupuna. Uh, but when I have 45-year-olds who, can't right click or don't know what that means and on a computer, and they're not able to move forward with this. And we're moving into, agentic AI, and our state, our nation actually is probably this is stay with our state is not going to be able to take advantage of these opportunities. So for us, the more the merrier that are doing it. There's no age limit for me. Um, the only challenge with somebody who is in high school still is going to be scheduling. You know, um, so that's the challenge that was on the person I spoke with on Maui.
There's someone else asking
Mhm,
about, are there other states or library systems doing things like
mhm,
this?
mhm,
I'm Uh, I think so. I can't name any off the top of my head, but
mhm.
I know I've read about it through like the state library systems and agencies and things like that. So I have heard of this, a similar type of program. I
Yep.
don't know of any off the top of my head though. Yeah.
I don't know about the libraries, but nationally, I mentioned earlier the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, NDIA, was the ones I looked to at first coining the phrase digital navigator. Um, they were the ones who had say, hey, this put people into communities who could help their community members, and put together some handbooks and guides. And we actually didn't look at those handbooks and guides. We probably should have. But we've worked with them before. I've worked with I know a lot of those guys at NDIA and North Star. And so North Star is a nonprofit out of Minnesota that has been doing online assessments, computer curriculum, basic level stuff for years. So we've had a pretty close working relationship with them since about 2021. Um, nobody else that um, I don't know anything about the libraries, but across the country there are digital navigator projects and programs.
Thank you. Kaʻala, you mentioned AI. Are you getting questions from people wanting help understanding AI or doing particular tasks with AI?
Yeah, yeah. We just did we did a pilot class, so most of our work as a digital navigator, when we hire digital navigators, we tell them, hey, listen, we did 712 classes. We love classes. It's not that at all, but we need one-on-one. And somebody who is a digital navigator, not every digital navigator will have both the ability to manage a one-on-one conversation and to manage a presentation in a classroom type environment. And so we emphasize the first, that can you do the one-on-one type of thing? That being said, we have done different classes. We find that it's a great funnel into the Navigator project itself. When people go, oh, but I have more questions. I'm like, perfect. Here's where you go to schedule an appointment. And we just did a class a couple of weeks ago on Molokai that was AI for everyday use. And we just to pilot it and test it, in the libraries. And we did it on Molokai. And we probably had 8 people there who were thrilled with the idea for the most part. But there's a lot of people who have come in that have been afraid. We get a lot of online security questions. Is this a scam? Is this real? AI is becoming, it is the shiny thing. It is the clickbait on the news. It gets people afraid, or it gets people excited. You're going to lose your job. You're going to get a new job. Um, but the online security and safety, which is different, is something that we get a lot of, uh, there's a lot of attention on that too. So AI is something, workforce is hard one of the things that we're trying to do is figure out how we can get more people in the workforce into the libraries for this type of training. And it's challenging because most people are working during the day. And if they're not working, it's going to be hard for them to say, I'm going to work all day and then go to a 6 o'clock class at night. Um, so that is something we're trying to do and trying to figure out, and offering different classes for them specifically and see where that goes. AI it's the shiny new kind of thing right now, but um, yeah, we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, thank you. I have lots of questions. I always have lots of questions, but does
Me
anybody
too.
else have
Me
any
too.
questions that they want to either say or pop into the chat?
Ask away. Yeah, I have lots of questions too all the time.
Well, I'm not seeing anything. So, Kaʻala, can you tell us a little bit more about Māpunawai and how you got started?
Sure, 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 sure. Yeah, Māpunawai is a name that was actually given to us from somebody at Kamehameha Schools, Kihaubad, and it has to do with the freshwater spring, like Māpunawai. So the image was freshwater, you know, flowing out to everybody, and we started as a nonprofit about 3 or 4 years ago. Mostly, just all we do is this: we address digital literacy, um, we address that digital divide. We started before the nonprofit part, where it was just me. It was not a mom and pop. My wife wasn't working with me yet, but my wife started like the most overqualified key puncher data entry person back in 2021, 2022, helping me input classes that I've done. She's a nurse practitioner, like I said, and so I'm like, hey, I need some help. And so she started doing that, but we started doing classes, offering free classes, and started that in 2021. And it's part of the free classes that we're doing. And those classes are very, very basic. We stay at the basic level for the most part in the beginning there. We call those classes Computer 001 as kind of a joke. It ended up as a joke because people go, "Oh, I'm in this class. What is this, 101?" I go, "No, 101 is college. Anything over 100 is college." So we're at 001. Ha 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 ha. So that became the joke, but that's like our flagship class. And so we started doing those classes, but partnering with the John A. Burns School of Medicine, JABSOM Area Health Education Center, started doing a lot of telehealth work with them, helping people connect to the computer for telehealth specifically. Hawaii Rural State Association, Hawaii Rural Health Association, State of Hawaii Rural Health Association, who we worked with before for years too. So we give away free computers and we had free classes. That's what we were doing when we met the library. And the library just has the reach of the libraries in the state is just amazing. It's a trusted, um, you know, place in the community, uh, and you know, access is a big deal, and that's one of the things that we've learned. We were already working with the libraries. Can we have a class in your library? That was sponsored by somebody else, and we'd do that. And So that became the thing. We gave away now probably over 4,000 computers to people, free computers that we've received, we bought. And there are all kinds of computers. Speaking of operating systems, we've given away a lot of Chromebooks, Windows laptops. We've given away MacBooks, which people just trip out on. But just recently, we gave away, I think, 8 MacBooks, and they had Linux on them. So we're still doing that. But I think the divide is getting more narrow. The question now is going to be, can people not just click on a mouse or click on YouTube and get to YouTube, but can they actually leverage the computer for, telehealth, for work, remote work, online entrepreneurialism? Those are things that we've been doing for the last 10 years too.
Yeah, thank you. So where does your funding come from?
In the beginning, there was none. So it was pretty funny. Like I was working for the Workforce Development Council, and I had a 1-year contract with them as an emergency hire during the pandemic. And it wasn't to create a computer class, a computer training thing. It was to help upskill our state's workforce, which ended up being we can't upskill them because they don't have computers and know how to use them. So that project ended, but people kept calling me, hey, can you do a class here? Can you do a class there? And I remember the first time I went to Lanai to do a class, my wife was so excited. She goes, oh, great, you got work? I go, what does that mean, work? You got a job? I go, what does that mean, a job? So is somebody paying for you to go there? I'm like, what does that mean? Is somebody paying for me? Like, so like I used to pay my way for that, and it was just free classes. But I got computers from JAPSOM, from the AHEC, and so they would pay me with computers, and I'll give those away. But now our funding is different sources as a nonprofit. Obviously, the HSPLS is huge. Um, Hawaii State Rural Health Association we've had a couple of years ongoing projects with them, primarily focused on telehealth. We worked with Charter before. We have some other private funders that would do small spot types of projects like a class in Molokai, or a couple of classes in Molokai. We've had people say, hey, um, I got I've got funds, I got grants, can you provide instructors? And we can buy computers. We've done that before too. But a lot of times the people say, I don't have any money, but I have bananas. I said, we can trade. So that works too.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I saw that Ellen joined us. Ellen, did you have any questions?
Oh no, I'm sorry I'm late, everyone. I had a meeting that
It's
went
okay.
far, but um I'm sorry if I missed the presentation, but I was just interested in learning about the Digital Navigators program. And so it seems that you guys provide technology education through the libraries.
Yes, exactly. And it's one-on-one. The Digital Navigator project is one-on-one. The two big, easy to access metaphors for most people are the Apple Genius Bar and the hospital emergency room. Again, minus the blood. I always want to make sure that that gets clear. People come in with whatever device they have, or don't have a device and have a question. We use devices at the library. The library has Chromebooks available for people to use, and so we use them. The 45-minute appointments. It's like setting an appointment with your doctor or a hairstylist. Um, some people think it's like setting an appointment with your dentist because it's painful, but we try to make it less painful and more fun. And I think we're getting there, and it's the numbers are supporting that statement. It's more fun than going to the dentist.
Yeah, so thank you. And this session is being recorded, so Ellen and anybody else who wants to will be able to get the whole story. Does anybody else have any final questions or things that you wanted to know about? Not seeing anything. So I just want to say mahalo, mahalo, mahalo to our presenters, Kaʻala and Christine. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And we look forward to hearing more about the success of the Digital Navigators program. So mahalo and mahalo to everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.